We open episode 5 on Maximus and Thaddeus sitting under a bridge, celebrating having found Hedzig, whilst listening to 50s rock on a portable radio. I would ask how they have a working portable radio, as the average battery life is far less than 200 years, but it could be a dynamo powered one. I just can't tell from the image presented. Still, both are laughing for several hours after getting Hedzig, as it is well after dark, and when they found it there was no sign of it being even close to dusk, so I guess they celebrated, walked wherever they are now, and started celebrating again, which is kind of an odd thing to do. Still, Thaddeus says he should be branded, because despite being dispatched by the Brotherhood in order to act as the squire for Knight Titus, it is not official until he gets branded, apparently. Maximus says it will hurt. Thaddeus pushes the request, and so Maximus goes through with the ritual and brands Thaddeus, who screams. I would imagine that getting branded is indeed quite painful, but I also imagine that this has been done in order to make the character even more of a joke when taking into consideration how Maximus grit his teeth when he went through the same thing. Anyway, Thaddeus is remaining hyped about returning to the Brotherhood as the T-Boys, as he still thinks he's with Titus. It looks like the cogs are starting to turn in Maximus's mind as his expression drops, probably remembering that the real Titus told him that squires which fail their knights get strung up by their lungs, so the punishment for not only failing their knights, but also stealing their clothes and armour must be far worse. Taking a deep breath, he tells Thaddeus there is something he needs to say, and flips up his visor to reveal that he is in fact not Titus, but Maximus. Thaddeus seems confused by this, and Maximus offers to still be friends, which shows that he's not exactly bright. You see, maybe from his perspective the two were getting closer, but from Thaddeus' perspective he was working as a squire under somebody completely different, and let us not forget that it was he who suggested beating up Maximus so that people would stop beating up him. To further emphasise this point, Thaddeus is starting to look quite scared as he asks where Titus is, to which Maximus says he's dead and they need to get their story straight. This is something that would be said between two people who have just murdered someone prior to getting arrested, not from one person who watched another die to another who was not even in the region when it happened. What he should have said would be something along the lines of, he was killed by a bear, I took the armour to carry on his mission for the glory of the Brotherhood. Still, Thaddeus says that they will kill Maximus, to which Maximus makes himself sound even more guilty and stupid by saying they will not have to find out. The tiny problem with that plan is at some point he's going to have to get out of the power armour, either on base or on the Pridwin, at which point someone will notice that he's not Titus. He would need to reveal himself when eating, sleeping and using the toilet, and given that he would be hailed as a hero for retrieving the target, there would be a lot of eyes on him. Quite rightly, Thaddeus says that the Brotherhood will find out, which turns Maximus aggressive, and he decides to kill Thaddeus in order to prevent that from happening, because he seems incapable of thinking ahead and realising that, as previously stated, he would need to get out of the armour at some point, even just to get the plates fixed, at which point they will find out. So Thaddeus tries to get behind Maximus, gets his foot crushed by the sheer weight of the armour, manages to climb on Maximus's back and pull out the fusion core, shutting down the armour and trapping Maximus inside. Thaddeus then limps away on his pulverised foot, taking Hedzig with him, leaving Maximus screaming about how he will kill him. This raises a design issue with the power armor, which is how is there not an internal unpowered release switch to let someone out who is trapped inside? The short answer for this is so one of the following scenes can happen. Said scene happens right after, as it is now daytime and Maximus has been standing stock still for hours. He appears to have fallen asleep at some point as his eyes open to the sight of 3 radroaches approaching his location. He starts to freak out as they climb over him, which you would think the armour would be able to keep out, but given how mere claws gouged a not insignificant rent in it before, it is hardly certain that this military grade frontline combat armour is indeed protective at this point. However, by sheer luck, Lucy has appeared and shoots the roaches. Now, I'm sure the writers and director did not think about this when making this scene, but a 10mm bullet just hit a giant roach that was on the front of the helmet, and the bullet did not pass through the roach or do any damage to the helmet. All that happened was the roach exploded, and the bullet just seemingly vanished. Because otherwise, they just put a sequence in that a 10mm round cannot even scrape power armor, but claws can. Now, as to why Lucy's here at this time, it is probably because the script says that these two need to meet here at this time, as if she was following the tracker that she put up Hedzig's nose, then she would not be here because she would have moved in the direction that Thaddeus would have been moving in several hours ago. But anyway, here we are now. Coincidences abound. Hearing Maximus plead for release from the armour, she flips the external helmet faceplate release latches and confirms that the guy in the power armour with the huge scrapes on the front of it was the same guy in Philly who was using power armour with huge scrapes on the front of it. The question is raised on why he cannot move, to which he says his fusion core was taken and asks to be let out. Lucy says she's had a tough week, which at a later point I will go through all the footage and try and confirm just how long she has been indeed out in the wasteland to confirm if it has been a week, but she is still reluctant to trust him. Now, from her perspective, Maximus has only been nice and protective towards her, and those who have not were raiders, still questioning how they knew what raiders were, Ghoul Howard, Snip Snip, and the High Boys. Marjoon was unhelpful, but later entrusted her help. Sand Filter Guy was just an idiot, and I don't recall anyone else that she has had a significant interaction with. As such, Maximus is probably the one person in the show who she would place her trust in. Anyway, Lucy says she is here now looking for Hedzig, which, as previously stated, she has a functioning tracker inserted into, and if she looked at her Pip-Boy, would tell her it is not in this location and moved away in the direction that she came from. She then throws up. Maximus bargains with her that he has Radaway in his suit that will purge her radiation sickness, and unless she lets him out, she will pass out and they will both die. Again, I refer to previous episodes where she has been in close proximity to 8 and over rads per second multiple times, which should have killed her several times over by now. But whatever, I guess. She asks his name, and after a short pause to get those tiny cogs working, he says his name is Knight Titus. Why exactly does he say this to her? She's not part of the Brotherhood, nor probably knows what they are. There is no reason for him to lie to her like this, unless it is to set up something in the future, and is a very suspicious thing to do right after saying she can trust him. Anyway, she lets him out, and knowing just what to do to activate the manual release from the outside, before identifying it as T60 power armor due to having read old tech manuals. This brings into question why she asked earlier why he cannot move, as if she is familiar with military power armor design, she would know they need fusion cores. Anyway, Lucy faints, and we cut to the doorway between vaults 32 and 33. Norm and Chet are on their way out, questioning how raiders got their hand on Rose McLean's Pip-Boy. The events taking place in the vaults cannot be taking place parallel to the events outside, as there is no way that Norm spent hours staring at one screen on a computer. Regardless, Chet suggests the logs were falsified, to which Norman questions why. I would question how, as it would have required someone from Vault 33 or 31 to enter 32 after the raiders had left in order to edit the logs to show a Pip-Boy granted access, as there is zero reason for the raiders to do it themselves. Remember that everyone in Vault 32 offed themselves months before the raiders turned up, so they cannot have done it. Also, they had to shift the rubble out of the way to gain access via 33, so nobody from there moved across to edit the records. In fact, nobody knows that Norman and Chet have entered 32, so they have no reason to edit them either. Vault 31, however, remains unaccounted for. Still, Norman says he wants to check one last thing, and the pair head to the 32 to 31 intravault door, only to find a pile of bodies that were seemingly trying to force their way in. How and why did they all die here when the previous episode showed they all off themselves? I do not know. It is a very odd scene to come across for apparent mass suicide. In fact, some of them are seen still holding tools as if they were in the process of breaking into the vault when they suddenly died and did not fall to the floor. Helpfully, someone has scrawled, "We know what is in there," on the wall in blood. Was it the same one who wrote the previous two messages? Probably not, but it's a funny thing to think about. Regardless, Chet convinces Norman to leave. Emerging into the wheat fields with rubble dust on their suits, they walk through the communal areas with not one person giving them odd looks, until Betty ambushes them from behind. She asks where they have been, they obviously lie about planting potatoes, and she lets them go. With that scene done, we go back to Lucy and Maximus. Lucy is hooked up to some IV Radaway, and Maximus is using nearby trash to hide the power armor, which has now been shifted onto the lower level and is face down. Given how Lucy was first unconscious and then hooked up to Radaway, he must have done this himself, meaning he must be incredibly strong in order to move the armor by himself into that position, as outside of Philly, he needed a chain and crank in order to get it vertical. He says he is surprised that anybody still lives in the vaults and thought they just had monsters in them. He changes the subject and says that his squire sold something vital to the Brotherhood and goes to leave. Lucy stops him and asks if the Brotherhood has more power armor and guns. He confirms they do, and she concludes that they must be after the head too, offering a trade. She helps them find the head for the Brotherhood in exchange for them helping rescue her father. This makes some degree of sense, as she does not know what is in Hedzig's neck, other than it gives off shocks when touched, and from her perspective, Lee Moldava is a villain who has kidnapped her father, and she has the location of their base of operations. Rather than give the villain what they want, give it to someone else, and assault the villain's lair. Maximus agrees to the deal, and we get some patriotic music. Back into Vault 33, and Betty is using the intercom to remind people to go vote for Overseer, stating that she has faith that they will make the right choice. Of course, she is one of the candidates for Overseer, along with Woody and Reg. In line, Mr. Mustache, whose name I have forgotten, turns around to tell Reg that he is not getting the vote, and instead he's going to vote for someone with experience. He also mentions Betty was overseer once before, and that she is getting his vote. And when Reg enters the vote booth, he votes for Betty too. Anyway, with that out of the way, we're back outside with Maximus and Lucy, following her tracker. Lucy says that they should catch up by sundown, suggesting that Thaddeus managed to get quite the lead on the two, considering he has a smashed foot. As they walk, Lucy asks about what has happened since the bombs dropped. Since being from a vault, she would not know. Maximus says the bombs dropped when he was a kid, which would make him around 230 if true. Lucy obviously does not believe him. In return, he questions her plan of turning up to a warlord, as he puts it, in the hope of getting a hostage released. She relates how life is in the vaults and reminisces about how she thought she could feel the sun on her skin, which would just have been an overhead light. Anyway, they carry on walking, and we cut to Norman in a dark room working on a computer. It turns out he is looking at the intravault trade records for the personnel movement. First we get Robert Olson, Overseer, 31 to 33, from 2101 to 2109. Next, Ava West, Overseer, 31 to 33, 2109 to 2121. Next, George Yaff, Overseer, 31 to 33, from 2121 to 2125. We get an unknown click, and then a continual line of 31 to 33 Overseers: Patricia P, Alexander, Lawrence R, and then Hank McLean from 2271 to 2297. Very mysterious how every Overseer was from 31. Jump to cake! As it happens, Betty has been elected with a 98% approval rate. Out of everybody left in the vault, that suggests a grand total of one person decided not to vote for her. Jump back to Norman at the computer as Betty's record appears, and she came from 31 to 33. As it turns out, those computer terminal scenes were in the past, as Norman is here at the ceremony as Betty cuts her victory cake. Norman lingers after congratulating her, which she seems to pick up on. But don't worry about any of that, as we're back outside again, once more with Maximus and Lucy as they continue down a railway track. Both comment on the Brotherhood's operations to use pre-war tech to gather pre-war tech to keep it out of the hands of those who would misuse it, calling it weird. I disagree on this point, as power armor is pre-war technology, and sending out patrols of guys in armor to secure pre-war technology and keep it safely locked away to prevent another massive disaster sounds quite reasonable. But oh no, standing ahead of them are two people who have just teleported into the scene, as neither were spotted by Maximus or Lucy as they were walking in a straight line. There is also a fair distance behind these two who are just standing there, so neither spotting the other until they were this close to each other is, quite frankly, impossible. Regardless, they both ask the other if they are armed, which both parties deny. The teleporters say they are just going to walk by. Lucy unclips her pistol, which Maximus tells her to hand over. She refuses, even though she is clearly ready to use it. Lucy has seemingly, between unclipping her holster and now, gone back to Vault naive Lucy, choosing to believe these new people, even though at the start of the episode she stated that everybody she had met had tried to kill her during the last week. Still, she tries to defuse the situation by suggesting that they all put their hands up on the count of 3. The others act reluctant but agree. Everybody puts up their hands and starts to cross. The woman, seemingly very interested in Lucy's Pip-Boy, smiles as they get close, and the new people draw guns. Maximus, however, turns out to be quicker on the draw and a better shot, taking them both out. He says that they were fiends, and that fiends are cannibals. Quite why the woman got excited looking at a Pip-Boy then is not brought up. Back to the vault we go, with Woody staring wistfully at his campaign poster. He is told he ran a good campaign, which apparently consisted of putting up a whole 10 posters. Mustache Man said he ran once and lost to Hank McLean following a weevil famine, which of course Woody would know about, given how he appears to be older than 25. He then gives the slogan, "When things look glum, vote for somebody," from Vault 31, suggesting that Woody and Reg never had a chance to begin with, if it's an ingrained saying. Switching to Norman and Chet with Stephanie's baby now. Norman asks if it does not seem odd for every overseer to have come from 31, adding on to what we know by saying it was the same for Vault 32. Chet says no, and that 31's got better resources, education, and of course the mantra that everybody knows, saying it's a powerful slogan. Norman questions if over 200 years of coincidence is the result of a slogan, but Chet brushes it off, not knowing the answer, as the pair continue to whisper before Chet reminds Norman that Stephanie is also from Vault 31. Unlike the others, however, she does not seem to have ever been Overseer of 33, which raises another question. Her name was on the wedding dress with the date of 2294, and that she came over to marry Bert as part of the Vault trade system, thus suggesting that members of Vault 31 have not just been overseers, but also members of the general population. Unless, of course, she came over to compete against Hank 2 years prior to the show starting and lost. Regardless of that, Stephanie emerges from the bathroom and Norman turns to leave, before asking her how different 31 was to 33. She seems to ponder for a moment before saying the mashed potatoes were a bit better. Norman confirms that Hank used to say that too before leaving. The next scene is still with Norman as he is delivering food for the prisoners on a trolley. Betty comes over the speakers saying she will hold a vault-wide meeting about their future tomorrow. With that line delivered, we jump outside to Maximus and Lucy again as they approach a big sign that reads, "Welcome to Shady Sands, first capital of the New California Republic. Population 34,852. Not knowing anything about it, she questions if it's real. Maximus seems surprised that she doesn't know. The knowledge of it existing seems to shake Lucy, as she says her vault's entire purpose is to emerge when the world is safe again and restart civilization. And yet it seemed to have happened without them. Maximus tells her that it didn't work out and walks off. The pair then emerge over a crater of what was once Shady Sands, which doesn't seem large enough to me to house 34,000 people, unless you take into account the ruins in the background as well. Lucy asks what happened. Maximus replies that people disagreed on how to save the world, before stating that he survived destruction. It's here we jump to Kid Maximus, climbing out of the fridge after the detonation, only to be met by a Brotherhood Knight who was seemingly on the scene when the detonation happened. Given the location of the fridge not being in the crater, we have to assume that it was located in the surrounding ruins, and the Brotherhood Knight was there because story plot reasons. Either way, Maximus says they need to continue on before the arm wound he took against the fiends starts acting up, and Lucy says they need to find medical help. Given that they came to Shady Sands following the tracker, it must be somewhere that Thaddeus stumbled past towards wherever it is he happens to be going. Rather conveniently, a short walk away from the bomb site is the Vault-Tec-owned Hawthorne Medical Laboratories. This does not appear to be the real-life Hawthorne Medical Associates, as the building is wrong, but if it is in the Hawthorne area of Los Angeles, then this is a very, very long way away from the Santa Monica Boulevard, which is the last road sign Lucy passed before the Super Duper Mart encounter. Anyway, Maximus suggests caution before going inside. Lucy says they might have first aid and goes in anyway. It should be of note that Maximus appears to have picked up a pipe pistol in this scene, presumably off the Fiends, as Lucy has the 10mm pistol. Still, with the light fading, he follows her inside and becomes a ghost before opening the doors. A slight editing error here, I think. Perhaps this was supposed to be the end of the episode with a fade out and an "oh, what happens next?" But then they added on a bit and forgot to re-edit the scene, because the very next shot is him pushing open the door from an inside camera angle. Lucy has vanished and the lights, still working after 200 years and a nearby nuclear detonation, are pulsing in rhythm, pointing forward. Moving forward, he passes a door labelled medical supplies and tries to open the next door, only to find the handle is painted on. Oh no! The lights go red, gas is deployed, and he is dropped through a trapdoor. Odd how much noise it makes, and yet he did not hear a thing when presumably Lucy fell into the same trap. I guess being off screen continues to mean it doesn't exist. Either way, we go to a black screen. Except we don't, as we've got another scene from inside the vault. Betty has led everyone through the door to 32, with rubble still visible behind her. However, they all seem to pass it easily into the grain fields, as she is explaining that she has spoken with the overseer of Vault 31 and agreed to separate the remaining population of 33 into halves. One remains behind, one repopulates 32. Of course, 32 looks immaculate, apart from the dead wheat, which means that given the announced time of 1 day between the voting day and the current one, and how much work has been done, the residents of Vault 31 must have come across and spent the entire day cleaning, replacing and removing all those dead bodies. We get interspersed shots of what it was like the previous day, combined with the looks of faces, leads to the conclusion that the residents of Vault 33 cannot have helped out, as only Norman and Chet seem to know what was there before. And by sheer coincidence, the Overseer's terminal has been smashed. The only thing seemingly out of place in the whole vault. Certainly whoever repaired everything did not want those records to be ever seen again. While Norman leans over the Overseer's desk, Betty comes up behind him and asks, "Find anything interesting?" I feel we are supposed to take from this that she has twigged what was going on, and she knew both Chet and Norman had been over to 32 and have an idea of what happened. For his part, Norman responds with, "Great job cleaning up." Both know what the other is getting at. She tries to cover up, saying it was the raiders, but they both know. Still, Norman asks about Rose McLean's Pip-Boy, to which Betty says it was buried with her. Now Norman knows that she is lying, because if true, then Lee Moldava would have needed to find Rose's grave in order to set her plan in motion, which has its own set of very wild variables. Anyway, we have one more scene to get through as we jump back to Lucy and Maximus on stretchers, having been knocked out by the gas pit trap. Or potentially the fall, it's not exactly clear. Anyway, Lucy wakes up first and looks around, only to find herself in a vault. Maximus wakes up second, asks where they are, and Lucy says it will be alright, they are in the best place, a vault. Now we cut to credits, and get a look at a library book with the last date as November 2276. Using future knowledge, this will be important later, as it is located within the ruins of Shady Sands Elementary School. Anyway, with all that out of the way, I cannot give this particular episode a high mark. Time is still out of whack, but that's fast becoming a standard for this show, and there are several issues that I've raised throughout this video. I understand that this is supposed to be the episode of Lucy and Maximus coming to trust each other, but there is an awful lot of walking and talking compared to anything else going on. The mystery of what is going on with the vaults is, I feel, the highlight for this episode, but they really could have done with fewer cuts back and forth for barely 5-minute scenes and just put them together. The Maximus fading out edit did make me laugh a bit, but not with the show, rather at the show. But it's okay because, you know, it's only Amazon and Bethesda working together on this. We shouldn't expect they have the money and resources to get things right before release at all. There is also the issue of where Ghoul Howard is during all this. You see, Lucy left the Super Duper Mart during the day. Then it is the next day when she meets Maximus, and we finish at dusk. Has he just been sitting in the Super Duper Mart for around 36 hours doing drugs, drinking booze and watching his own videos? Who knows? I give it a 4, and that's being generous. Without the subplot of Norman versus Betty, it would be maybe a solid 3. Next time, whenever that will be, I'll crack on with episode 6. Until then, folks.